Hello there. So I'm starting a new channel, um, trying to talk through uh, my experience with surviving and continuing to recover and heal from one of the most toxic relationship I've ever been in, which is with somebody with she has quiet borderline personality disorder. That's my diagnosis, but I'm absolutely certain that's what's going on with her. Um, Let me just get to some things about borderline. Let me just start it off by saying if you are in a relationship with somebody who is borderline or whom you think might be borderline, I can tell you that um, if you have this hope that somehow the relationship is going to get better over time, it won't. Um, the only way that I could possibly imagine having a successful relationship with a borderline is if they are in therapy, targeted therapy for borderline personality disorder. They are conscious that they have the disease and that they are not in any denial about it, and they are working on it, seeing a therapist regularly, like twice a week or something, and really working hard on that, and maybe in couples therapy with that same, so that you can really work and target on the behavior and the thinking. What I've read is that there is a good recovery rate for those people. But if that's not the case, let me just tell you it is impossible. You will not be able to help them. You will not be able to fix them. You will not be able to get them to love you. And the reason for that, it took me a very long time to realize this. Well, for me, a long time, months. They are not wired the same way that you are. And so their form of love is not the same as yours. So, what you expect from love is bonding and devotion and empathy. And I'm not talking about momentary empathy, I'm talking about empathy that lasts. The main thing I've found is that there is no, that everything is temporary. And this is what confused me. And in the beginning, before I knew she had borderline, I thought I was going crazy. Because what I found is that, when problems arose or conflicts arose, and then we would talk them through, when she would get into a receptive state to listen and hear what I was saying and apply it to herself, which she was brilliant at, she would then be able to identify and analyze her side of it. In my mind, that's giving me a false sense of security, because with the average person, when they do that, it means that that awareness is going to result in a change in behavior consistent going forward in the future. But what I realized is that any realizations that they have are just for that moment. And they may say, yes, I'm going to change, and from here on out, and she would do this, from here on out, we're going to do this, and here's how we'll fix it. And she means every word when she says it, but there's nothing for that realization to ground into. And that's because borderlines, like, other personality disorders, are people who, when they were toddlers, were not given the proper nurturing and attention and consistency that allows for toddlers to create a sense of identity. So I do believe that there's something in the brain that has not been developed, number one, but on a psychological and emotional level, they don't have a sense of self. And what I've learned is that when you make realizations, when you make commitments, when you have the emotional inspiration to create a business or something, the sense of self is like the hard drive. And so those decisions, those realizations get programmed into the self, and the self holds on to that, so that when you wake up the next day, you may have different feelings. You may be afraid, you may have other conflicting feelings, but the sense of self, like the hard drive, holds on to the program, which is your decision. And then that you're able to take action on that regardless of your feelings. The more mature you are, the more able you are to take action in spite of your negative feelings. I found that with borderlines, since they don't have a sense of self, those realizations and those decisions have no place to ground, and they are only able to do whatever is emotionally stimulating them in the moment. So if they feel emotionally stimulated in the moment to be good to you, to be kind to you, to be loving, to when they can, when they're happy, they're the most amazing people to be around because they adore you and they shower you with love and affection. You think that's their character. It's not. It's just a phase, and once that feeling fades, they will act on whatever the next feeling is. What I've also found is that intimacy creates a strong rejection uh, action in them. So the other thing I noticed again, I have to remember, going back, that the times when she was with me and loving me, and after she had broken up with me, and then we talk, and then because I'm able to, influence her thinking, because she's very easily influenced by whomever she's around. Then she's like, oh yeah, and you are great, and you are the best, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and then the intimacy, I share my feelings, and then she loves that. She soaks up all the feelings, whatever they are. I'm crying, I'm sad, I'm happy. As long as I'm not raging at her or criticizing her, whatever the feelings are, she's soaking it up because she feeds off of it. And she honestly responds with empathy and with kindness and with love and all of that. But then, because there's no identity for those experiences to lodge into, I think we've made progress. We're deeper. But actually, the emotional bonding that occurs in the moment is pleasant for them. But then, when they go to sleep, those feelings have no place to go. And the intimacy then brings them closer to that big, giant, gaping hole of anxiety that's inside of them because they have no sense of self. And so the opposite reaction would happen. And if I wasn't there to physically stimulate a feeling in her, if we had had a bonding experience, and then like I went home the next morning, her rejection would be worse. And what she would do is that she would reject me, break up with me, and she would take out of context certain things that I had said, and in her mind blew those up into, they were full-blown personal attacks against her. And so she couldn't have anything to do with me because I was trying to destroy her. I mean, it was just insane. And it was those things that drove me to research borderline personality disorder, and that helped me. So if you're with a borderline, I want you to know that unless, again, they're in targeted therapy, nothing you say has any meaning unless it can be taken negatively. So if you do or say anything that she can take as a criticism or he can take as a criticism, even if it's happening in the moment that they can handle it, because there's other things and they're processing it with their brain, the moment that the stimulation of you being there is gone, that will then, the only thing that will remain is anything that can be taken as a criticism, and then that gets focused on and blown up. And so the point is, they can't love you. They can't love you. They don't have the ability. They also can't have true empathy for you. In the moment, they may be getting high off of whatever feeling is coming off of you. You're crying, you're weeping about your dead dog or something. They will enjoy that like watching a movie. It's just like going and watching a movie for us. We go and watch a movie, we cry, and then we get on our, it doesn't mean anything. That's what it's like. They'll be there and they can empathize in the moment, but it doesn't take root. She won't like, he won't like, gosh, I really am going to devote my life to healing that in them. They can't do that. Even if they say it in the moment, it won't ever come. It won't ever happen. You can't ever depend on anything, they say. Um, they don't have the ability to make any real changes in their life. They don't have the ability to follow through on anything. So you will never get any consistency. But the intoxication of being around them when you're the focus, when you're their favorite person, is amazing. And unfortunately, I just had to come to realization that even that was a fantasy. It wasn't real. None of it was real. And they can't love you. They don't have the ability to truly love. They cannot bond. So whatever feeling, no matter how deep, no matter how intense they're feeling love for you in that moment, it's not creating a bond. You, because that's the way you are. You're not borderline. You bond when you are in love. The more love you have, the stronger the bond is. And you unconsciously just assume that's what's happening. It's not. There is no bond being created. The pain that they cause you, they may have a superficial awareness after the fact if they've come off of their, roller coaster and they're on the part of the roller coaster where they're coming back to you. They may have an intellectual understanding, but there's no real awareness. And this is the sociopathic side of it. They can apologize and tell you, how horrible that is. And yes, that was so horrible that I did that. And I'm so sorry. I'm going to change. It's sociopathic in that it's not that they're lying, but it doesn't really connect. And every time that this happened with the woman I was with, and the part of the phase where she was coming back, and I was like, "You hurt me so bad. You did this, you did that." And she's like, "I know, that's so horrible." And she would be able to do that, but there'd be no emotion there. And I realized after many times of seeing that there was no emotion there, and it was like, you see with sociopaths, they don't have any empathy. So they'll have an awareness that they may have done something to cause you pain, but there's no real empathy there. They don't feel it. So it's really just about they see something in you that they want, and they're telling you what they believe to be true, but they're also telling it to you to get you back in. And even if they think that they want to change, it's not backed by any real empathy. They're missing that part in their brain. It's gone, or it was never developed. So they can't love you. They can't bond with you. Emotional bonding creates devotion. So when you emotionally bond with somebody who's loved you and nurtured you, it creates this devotion to want to be there for them. That goes into your sense of self, which then creates a continued in the future lifestyle, actions and attitudes that create deeper loving. I mean, we're built this way. This is how our brain is formed when we're little kids. Because they didn't get the proper nurturing as kids, the devotion isn't there. So they are never really devoted to you. They're not capable of it. What they are capable of is, you will always be something for them. Even if they're able in the moment with all the emotions going through them to be there when they're adoring you and they're touching you and they're loving you and being really, it's not really from a desire of long-term devotion. It's just something that's happening in the moment, but it's not really attached to anything fundamental within them. Everything is happening on a superficial level. So what I'm saying is that you will always just be an object to them. And they're only thinking about how you are going to make them feel. And if they have a feeling in the moment that you are going to make them feel good, they will reach out and they will be loving and kind, not because they're trying to manipulate you, but because they're not manipulative. They don't have the profundity to be manipulative. They're not manipulative to that degree. I mean, they do manipulate, but Not like a narcissist who's got this long manipulation plan. They don't work like that. It's just like a 2-year-old. Oh, you make me happy. I want you to make me happy. That's all that's happening there. And I remember now, after the fact, when my, whatever you call her, ex-girlfriend or whatever, when she was coming back to me, a lot of the times she would say, you know, and I realized that you made me feel this way and you made me feel that way. And so I want to get back together with you. And it took me a while to realize there was never an acknowledgement of, you know, I was really wrong here. Even though they might apologize, there's no sense of, I was really wrong about this and you didn't deserve that. And there wasn't ever any mention of, and I really want to be there for you and I want to be devoted to you. The only times that she would say those kinds of things were things to try and convince me to stay. They weren't coming from an honest place of a desire. So they don't have devotion. They don't have love. They don't take any responsibility. You know, when we would be having things go on, she would say, even she'd be listening to me without any response, and she would say, you know what? I don't think that's my problem. I think that's your problem. They take no responsibility for their actions. There's no accountability. No matter what promises they make, they will not be able to fulfill them ultimately. I guess I should say any promises they make, you know, they will only be able to fulfill them to the extent that another feeling doesn't come along and switch their feelings. So they could marry you, they could, you know, promise you their firstborn, they could make the ultimate vow to the universe that, but the moment that a feeling comes in that changes that, they will walk away from that and not bat an eye. And they will justify it by saying, I have the right to make whatever decisions I want, which means they can only make decisions on whatever feeling is in them in the moment. And it took me a really long time to figure out that I was having this one-way relationship with somebody that wasn't there. And that all of the things that are part of real relationships, sharing of feelings, which changes your empathy and changes your actions in the future, the love that you receive that makes you feel good creates a bonding and creates a devotion going forward that you give to your partner. The ability to acknowledge your part in things, to have empathy for how you have made the other person feel, and to form awarenesses that change your behavior in the future. All of that is missing. There's either something in the brain that never got developed and or emotionally. So if you're with a borderline and they're not getting therapy, I don't care how hopeful things look. Here, remember that I told you this. When you need them the most, and when you are the most vulnerable to them, that is when they will reject you. That's the other thing I learned. That's a rule. I can look back on it. That was the case. And what I found is that whenever there was a deep emotional connection which started to create intimacy and bonding, in the moment she was there. But then what would happen is that the intimacy and the bonding would create absolute horror in her the next day. And that's because there's no identity to hold on to the bonding. And so then what I think what happens is they start to really begin to love you, but then their inherent fear, I mean, just absolute terror of rejection kicks in, and then they create the rejection in their mind, and then they reject you. That's been my experience anyway. So if you do have borderline and you're watching this, now you know the perspective of somebody who doesn't. And if you're able to hear this, you need to know how horrifically damaging your behavior is. And if you can get help, you know, you'll be able to learn ways to respond to your feelings and your impulses in a way where you can actually be in a relationship. Okay, so that's it.